Isn't it curious? Today, there are 30.97 million more men than women, yet in Hangzhou's dating market, men have become a scarce resource. According to statistics, the ratio of men to women in Hangzhou's matchmaking market has reached an astonishing 1:40. Right now, I'm at the WAN Song Academy, Hangzhou's famous matchmaking corner. After taking a look around, it's clear that there are far more women than men. All these signs point to one clear issue. The number of men willing to marry is decreasing, and the demand for them far exceeds the supply. The reason? A harsh reality. Women are being placed on a pedestal, while men have given up. To put it simply, even though there are more men than women, the majority of the 30.97 million extra men do not meet women's standards for a partner. And what are these standards for women? A house, a car, money, job stability, good looks, above average height, and the ability to provide emotional support. Now think about it. Would men who meet all these requirements even end up in the dating market? For men, the dating market's requirements are incredibly high. Height, education, job, income, and even family background are scrutinized. But for women, the standards are much lower. Being young and attractive is often enough. This natural inequality creates an awkward situation. Even women considered good candidates find it extremely difficult to find a good man. Despite this, women are still influenced by capital-driven narratives and hold firm to the mentality of better single than settling. Meanwhile, men, left with no alternatives, give up and stop trying. They'd rather spend their time playing video games than think about marrying or supporting a family. At its core, the issue lies in traditional values and a regression in societal perspectives. The outdated mindset that men should marry down and women should marry up, along with the expectation that men must buy a house, a car, and pay a bride price, is the fundamental cause of this mismatch in the dating market. What's your take on this?
When the cost of getting married far exceeds the price of hiring a prostitute, and the moral standards of marriage candidates are far lower than those of escorts, more and more men are unwilling to get married. Men think, if I visit escorts regularly, it only costs me about 500 yuan each time. High-end ones are just around 1,000 or 2,000 yuan, and I can choose from a variety of beautiful faces and long legs. But if I get married, I'll have to pay a bride price of 188,000 yuan, take on a 30-year mortgage, and all I get is a long-term meal ticket. Won't I eventually grow tired of this? Wouldn't it be better to pay per visit? At least this way, the experience is good, there's variety, and it's always fresh. Marrying you means draining my parents' lifelong savings. On top of that, I'd have to pamper you, cater to your needs, and hand over my paycheck every month. I'd have to treat your parents like my own, even endure being looked down upon by your mother. During the holidays, I'd have to spend extra money on gifts. For what? In this setup, there's no emotional support to be gained. If we get divorced, I'd lose half of my assets. When you think about it, it just feels like a loss. So what is the essence of marriage? The phrase marry a man, eat from a man reveals its economic nature. Have you ever calculated how high the cost of marriage is today? Let's take rural areas as an example. If you're a rural family with a son, you'd need to build a house, right? A 2-story rural home would cost about 200,000 to 300,000 yuan, plus 100,000 yuan for renovations. Starting at the age of 20, you'll have to prepare for matchmaking, buying an average car for appearances at around 150,000 yuan. The bride price in many areas is around 166,000 yuan, plus an additional 30,000 yuan for 3 golds or 5 golds. And nowadays, most rural brides also demand a house in town, with a down payment costing at least 200,000 yuan. Add in the cost of a wedding banquet and other expenses, which could amount to another 50,000 yuan. When you add it all up, you're looking at nearly 1 million yuan. In some cases, the bride's family might demand even higher bride prices, 200,000, 300,000, or even 500,000 yuan. While marriage expenses only seem to increase, most rural families, whose parents are laborious at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder, struggle to save even 1 million yuan in their lifetimes. Even if they scrape together everything they have, borrowing money and taking out loans, they can barely manage to get their son married. But these loans and debts still have to be repaid, burdening the entire family. In second and third tier cities, the down payment for a house is even higher. If we calculate based on a price of 15,000 yuan per square meter, buying a 100 square meter apartment would require a down payment of at least 500,000 yuan. Then there's the cost of car loans, mortgages, and bride prices, which would add up to at least tens of thousands of yuan. So, no matter where you are, the cost of getting married is incredibly high. And what are the benefits of marriage? Passing on the family name or having someone to care for you in old age? It's laughable. Let me ask you, how many people can confidently say that they can provide for their parents' retirement on their own? If someone can, I truly respect them. With aging populations, one young person may have to support 3 or 4 elderly individuals. How could they possibly manage that? Ultimately, you'll still have to rely on yourself. Do you remember the recent viral story about the fat cat incident? Society is flooded with socialite and gold digger training courses, teaching many women to treat relationships and marriage as a business opportunity to exploit men financially. They see men as ATMs. Once they determine a man has no remaining value, they swiftly dump him and move on to the next target. Take the fat cat case as an example. This young man, with exceptional gaming skills, saved 510,000 yuan over 2 years. At just 21 years old, at the start of his adult life, he encountered a 6-year-older, cunning female scammer. She brainwashed him relentlessly, convincing him to prove his love. Fat Cat played games overnight, transferring all his earnings to her. In the end, he suffered extreme mental abuse and lost his life. There are similar cases, like Zhai Xinshin, who scammed 13 million yuan through marriage fraud. Not only did she swindle money, but she also mentally tormented her husband until he took his own life. Who would still have high hopes for marriage after hearing such stories? So how do you think the marriage market will evolve in the future? The number of single individuals has already exceeded 200 million. Both men and women are increasingly reluctant to marry. Men are getting smarter, too. Their Alipay balances are for women to see, not for them to spend. Women, on the other hand, are becoming more educated, earning more money, and achieving financial independence. This raises their expectations for marriage. They now demand not only shared values but also good looks and chemistry. As a result, both men and women find it increasingly difficult to achieve what they want in marriage. Instead, marriage often lowers their quality of life. The smarter and more forward-thinking individuals realize this trend earlier, enabling them to live more clearly and purposefully. For both men and women, forget about romance, focus on wealth. Earning money should always come first.
越来越多的男人
More and more men don't want to get married, not because they don't have money. Do you know why more and more men in today's society don't like women? I don't know if you've noticed a growing issue. Nowadays, it's not just many women who don't want to get married, but more and more men, some of whom are already at the marriageable age, whether they're single or have a girlfriend, just keep delaying and avoiding marriage. They are not poor. On the contrary, they have money, a house, and a car. But the real reason, once you hear it, is truly heartbreaking. Today, most men are starting to distance themselves from women, even avoiding them. A large number of men have simply chosen never to get married. For those who care about this topic, feel free to like and save the video. Now, let's listen to the thoughts of a 41-year-old man about this, and see if you agree with his perspective. I have a friend who's 41 years old and still single. The reason he chose not to get married isn't because of poor financial conditions or lack of work. On the contrary, he has a very respectable job, working at a channel of Beijing TV, where his work involves filming, and he earns quite well. Moreover, he has a car, a house, and lives alone, not with his parents. Some people started to question him, asking if he had any issues, or if he was a bad person. Others say he might be a mama's boy and that's why no one wants to marry him. But, in reality, these aren't the real reasons. During the Chinese New Year, I had the chance to meet him, and I even joked with him. I said, "You're 41, living such a good life. Why haven't you married yet? If you can't find someone, I can introduce you to someone from my workplace." To my surprise, he gave me 3 reasons for not wanting to get married, and after hearing them, I found them very realistic and quite heartbreaking. Today, I'll share these reasons with you. The first reason he gave is that he fears meeting a woman who can't be satisfied. It's undeniable that women today have very high demands. They want a man who can impress in the living room and also in the kitchen, Someone who is both successful financially and emotionally, and who is always available to pamper and love them. For small things, they want to buy. For big things, they also want to buy. If they're happy, they buy. If they're sad, they buy. They want to be the queen, but also the favorite concubine, and no matter how much you earn, it's never enough. They always think their husband is a little worse than others. Men, too, are human and sometimes get tired. In the end, they'd rather stay single because it's simpler. The second reason is the influence of changing times. He worries that, after marriage, he might have to suffer. Women today are hard to deal with. These days, it's no longer the era of man working, woman at home. Today's women don't just know how to sew and handle household chores. They also have the same level of education as men and occupy the same professions. No field is exclusively for men anymore. Women are on an equal footing now. They've broadened their horizons, they understand the world better, and naturally, their expectations for their husbands are higher. If you're weaker than them, it's unacceptable. If you're better than them, they still expect you to listen to them. They want you to manage the house while also excelling in your career. They want you to be talented and wealthy, while also being meticulous and loving. The pressure is immense, and the constant exhaustion could eventually lead to depression. Living like this is unbearable. He'd rather be single, where he can occasionally slack off, do whatever he wants, and even go on a spontaneous trip without any baggage. The third reason is the heavy financial pressures of life. He said that, although it bothers him, most men have a traditional family mindset. For them, building a family and a career is a big responsibility. Marrying means committing to a lifelong duty, with all the responsibilities that come with it. But today, the pressures of life are enormous. From small expenses, like food and utilities, to big ones, like paying for a house and a car. And when you have children, the pressure only increases. From the moment the child is born, you need to work tirelessly to support the family. He humorously said, "After paying off the mortgage and car loan, I'm now in debt with a loan. It's debt that will be passed on to the kids." With the burden of caring for both elderly parents and ensuring the future of children, it's impossible to handle everything. He thinks it's better to stay single, where he can eat well and live without that heavy load. After hearing him, I do think he has some valid points, but the truth is, those who choose not to marry are also wasting their emotions and their youth. We can't forget that not all women are like he describes. There are still good women out there, right? I'd love to hear what you think of the 3 reasons my friend gave. Do you support the idea that more and more men prefer to stay single rather than get married?
Hello， 大家好，这里是残情原创情感。
The so-called self-inflicted singleness of men born in the 90s, also referred to as suicidal singleness. But is this choice to stay single really voluntary? Many say it is, but in reality, this kind of singleness is not entirely by choice. If these men met the right person, someone who truly captured their hearts, of course, they would consider marriage. Who wouldn't want to marry someone they truly like? So why is it that so many men born in the 90s no longer want to pursue relationships? Why don't they want to fall in love anymore? The main reason is that they suffer from a deep lack of emotional security. They live in constant fear of losing what they already have. Some people claim that 90s-born men are extremely selfish, that they live only in their own worlds. But that's not true. They behave this way because they don't feel secure in the world around them. Society doesn't provide them with that sense of security. High living costs and exorbitant housing prices keep them trapped in their own bubbles. Many people advise them, you need to expand your horizons, grow your social circle. But before saying this, do those people ever look at their wallets? Just the costs of a car and a house are enough to crush them, leaving them gasping for air. They can't even ensure their own sense of security, let alone think about love. Some argue that emotional security comes from within, from inner strength. But that's just self-deception. True security comes from material stability. When you have financial stability, security comes naturally. The root cause of self-inflicted singleness among 90s-born men is their inability to achieve material security. They have to work hard to build stability, because, nowadays, everything seems to have a price tag. And I can assure you, once a man achieves financial stability, he becomes much more confident and secure. Remember this, only after securing your basic needs can you think about love. Many men born in the 90s can't even ensure their own basic necessities. That's why they spend all their time thinking about how to live with more security and comfort, not about love. Now, if they met someone who truly didn't care about material things, someone who cared only about love and their connection, who wouldn't want to get married? But, unfortunately, this idea is just a fantasy. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about this.
Marriage in China, it seems to have become one of those exotic dishes no one is particularly eager to try. Back in the day, it was the staple on the menu. Everyone wanted it. Everyone did it. But now, the post-2000 generation seems to be leaving that dish untouched. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. Think about it. You step into the job market full of dreams, only to find a salary stuck in a time warp that's practically the same as it was 10 years ago. But now, you're working for 3 or for people living in a shoebox you call an apartment and spending half your paycheck just on rent. Oh, and the companies? They're always downsizing, demanding endless overtime, and practically hijacking your personal life. In this scenario, who has the mental space to think about kids, marriage, or anything beyond survival? Of course, society isn't pleased. They point fingers at this generation and say, "You're selfish. All you think about is yourselves." But is it really selfishness or just a dose of reality? Because, let's face it, these young people are thinking far more critically than we ever did. Back in our day, marriage was a social obligation. You got married because it was expected of you. Now, they look at all of this and think, why bother? Is it even worth it? And honestly, they've got a point. Today, marriage isn't a rule, it's a choice. And by choice, I mean, I'll only get married if it actually improves my life. If it brings happiness, great. If it adds pressure, limitations, and debt, they'd rather pass. To parents and neighbors, this might seem cold or even disrespectful, but isn't it simply a conscious decision? Then there's another interesting angle, friendship, or more accurately, the lack of it. Let's be real, most relationships that survive today are bound by interests. The so-called true friendships dissolve quickly when you're drowning in debt or facing tough times. Who's going to lend you money when you need it most? No one. What's left? Mockery, judgment, and that awkward silence. And if, by chance, you manage to succeed in life, get ready, because those friends will reappear in no time, but only to grab a piece of the pie. So, it makes perfect sense that Chinese men are increasingly steering clear of marriage. Who wants to add more weight to the scale when life is already heavy enough? Between paying bills, dealing with the boss, and trying to keep their sanity, marriage feels like a luxury or perhaps an unnecessary risk. It's better to focus on their own freedom and peace of mind. Because, in the end, being single isn't an escape, it's a choice. What about you? What do you think about all this? Do you agree with this mindset, or do you still believe marriage is the right path? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next discussion. After all, who says we need rings to talk about life, right?